Rise, my warriors. Today, we claim our destiny.
The Cathedral of Eternal Stars had witnessed 10,000 years of celestial history. Its crystalline walls refracted light from 3 suns, casting rainbows across marble floors that had been walked by emperors and conquerors. Today, it would witness something unprecedented and, to many, shameful. Princess Aria Celestine stood before the altar, her posture perfect, her expression carved from ice. Her gown was woven from starlight silk, a fabric worth more than most planets. Diamonds glittered in her platinum hair, which cascaded down her back like a frozen waterfall. She was the jewel of the Celestian Dominion, descended from a bloodline that had ruled the stars for millennia. And she was about to marry a human. The thought made her jaw tighten. Humans, the youngest of the spacefaring races, barely 3 centuries off their muddy little world. They had no culture worth mentioning, no history that mattered, no refinement. They were useful only for their numbers and their strange obsession with warfare. The Dominion needed their fleet support, so Aria's father had arranged this transaction. Commander James Reeves walked down the aisle alone. No family accompanied him. No honor guard flanked his steps. He wore a simple black uniform with minimal decoration, just a single silver insignia on his collar. He was tall and lean, with short brown hair and calm hazel eyes that seemed to take in everything without judgment. The Celestian nobles whispered among themselves, their voices carrying in the vast chamber. Look at that drab uniform. Does Earth have no concept of ceremony? I heard he's some kind of soldier. How crude. The princess deserves a mate from the Auroran dynasty, not this specimen. James heard every word. His face showed nothing. He reached the altar and stood beside Aria, careful to maintain proper distance. She didn't look at him. She refused to acknowledge his presence at all. High Priest Kael'ron performed the ceremony with barely concealed distaste. The ancient words of binding were spoken, the ritual light was exchanged, and it was done. Aria was now Aria Celestine Reeves, though she planned never to use the full name. She turned and walked toward the reception hall without a glance at her new husband. The wedding feast was held in the Palace of Ascending Light. Tables stretched across a hall large enough to house starships, laden with delicacies from 100 worlds. Musicians played instruments that sang with the voices of nebulae. Nobles in elaborate robes mingled and danced, celebrating the political alliance while quietly mocking its centerpiece. Aria sat at the high table, James beside her. She spoke animatedly with her father, Emperor Theron. She laughed with her childhood friend, Lady Saris. She discussed trade routes with Ambassador Dex. But to James, she offered nothing. Not a word. Not a glance. He might as well have been furniture. Duke Valen approached the high table, his ceremonial sword glinting at his hip. He was Aria's distant cousin, a decorated military commander with a reputation for ruthlessness and an ego to match. His silver eyes glittered with amusement as he stopped before James. Commander Reeves, Valen said, his voice carrying across nearby tables. Conversation stopped. Attention turned. I've been curious about you. Tell me, what qualifications does one need to marry above one's station? James set down his glass carefully. I imagine it helps to be asked. Charming. Valen's smile was sharp. I hear Earth is proud of its warriors. Perhaps you'd honor us with a demonstration, a duel, to show the princess what manner of protector she's gained. The hall grew quieter still. Dueling was a respected tradition among Celestian nobility. Refusing was seen as cowardice. James met Valen's eyes calmly. This is a celebration of unity, Duke. I don't think bloodshed would be appropriate. Bloodshed? Valen laughed. Surely you don't think you'd land a blow. I'm offering you a chance to show you're not completely useless. I appreciate the offer, James said evenly, but I'll decline. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Disappointment. Contempt. Then Arya felt a flash of anger. Destroyers. He couldn't even defend his own honor. Darker, pathetic, surrounded by an aura. Valen shook his head with mock sadness. Even through the sensors. A warrior who won't fight. When they fired, how very human. More horrifying than the he walked away to scattered chuckles. Entire squadrons. James returned to his meal as if nothing had happened. Collapsing. Arya watched him from the corner of her eye, expecting something. What the hell are those things? Anger. Embarrassment. But his expression remained serene, unreadable. Her voice now openly the feast ended near midnight. The energy readings Arya rose and walked toward her private quarters, aware that James followed at a respectful distance. She stopped at her door and finally addressed him directly. Our sensors can't track. Let me establish the rules of this arrangement, she said, her voice cold and precise. This marriage is political necessity, nothing more. You will occupy the guest wing. You will not enter my chambers. You will attend required functions and remain unobtrusive otherwise. You will not embarrass me further than your existence already does. Is this clear? James studied her face for a moment. Something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, not hurt, just a brief shadow of assessment. Then it was gone. Perfectly clear, Your Highness. Good. Cascade protocol. She palmed the door open. Are we really doing this? Remember your place, Commander. The door sealed between them. Protocol is in effect. James stood in the corridor for several seconds before turning and making his way to the guest wing. His quarters were modest by palace standards. A sleeping chamber, a small study, a window overlooking the military training grounds. He didn't mind. He'd slept in worse places. Far worse. Almost like determination. He removed his uniform jacket and stood by the window. The triple suns were setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet. The palace grounds spread below, beautiful and carefully maintained. It was peaceful here. Safe. It wouldn't stay that way. James pulled a slim datapad from his belongings and activated it with a touch. The screen glowed softly, displaying information that would have caused panic if the Celestians knew it existed. Long-range sensor data. Fleet movement projections. Casualty estimates. The Void Reavers were coming. A force that had annihilated 17 civilizations. A swarm of AI-controlled warships that knew no mercy, no negotiation, only consumption and expansion. They'd been approaching Celestian space for months, hidden in the dark spaces between stars. Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Network had detected them first. The United Earth Council had quietly sent out warnings, offered assistance. Most species had ignored the messages, dismissing them as human paranoia. The Celestian Dominion had been more receptive, but only barely. They'd agreed to a diplomatic marriage to strengthen ties, but they hadn't taken the threat seriously. They would. Soon. James closed the datapad and looked at his reflection in the window. He'd served in the Void Guard for 12 years, Earth's elite force dedicated to fighting existential threats. He'd been in battles that would never be recorded, fought enemies that officially didn't exist. The United Earth Council hadn't sent him here to be a diplomat or a trophy husband. They'd sent him to be a weapon. And when the time came, that's exactly what he'd be. The next morning, Arya woke to find James training in the courtyard below her balcony. She'd come to the balcony to watch the sunrise and found him instead, moving through combat forms she didn't recognize. His movements were fluid and precise, each strike perfectly controlled. There was no wasted motion, no dramatic flourishes, just efficient, deadly technique. She watched for several minutes, fascinated despite herself. When he finished, sweat glistening on his face, he looked up. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Arya turned away sharply and went back inside. He was still just a human. Still beneath her notice. The fact that he could fight meant nothing. The Dominion had thousands of skilled warriors, but throughout the day, she found her thoughts returning to that moment, to the way he'd moved, to the absolute calm in his eyes. It unsettled her more than she wanted to admit. Weeks became months. James fell into a routine. He attended diplomatic functions when required, standing silent at Arya's side. He was polite to everyone, engaged when spoken to, but never pushed himself forward. The nobles grew bored with him. He was too quiet, too uninteresting to mock effectively. But Arya noticed things. Small things that didn't fit the image of a simple soldier. She noticed that James learned Celestian in 3 weeks when most humans took years. She noticed that he read voraciously, history, military theory, xenobiology, everything he could access. She noticed that he observed people with an intensity that suggested he was cataloging details, analyzing patterns. And every morning before dawn, he trained alone. Always alone. Always with that same fluid precision that made her breath catch when she saw it. One evening, Lady Saris commented on it. Your human is quiet. He's not my human, Arya said automatically. He's a political arrangement. Still, most humans are loud and boisterous. This one is like a shadow. He knows his place. But Saris's words stayed with her. A shadow. That's exactly what James had become. Present but unnoticed. There but not there. It should have been what she wanted. Instead, it bothered her in ways she couldn't articulate. The storm broke on a night of celebration. The Dominion was hosting ambassadors from the Cryon hegemony to negotiate mineral rights. The great hall blazed with light and music. Arya stood near her father's throne, playing her role as diplomatic host with practiced grace. James stood in his usual corner, a glass of water in hand, watching the crowd with those calm, analytical eyes. Arya was speaking with Ambassador Krex when she saw movement in her peripheral vision. A servant approaching with a tray. Nothing unusual, except the servant's hands were wrong. Too steady. Too purposeful. She turned her head just as the servant's hand moved toward his jacket, toward a weapon. But James was already there. One moment he was across the room. The next he was between Arya and the assassin. His hand caught the attacker's wrist before the energy blade fully deployed. There was a sharp crack, bone-breaking, and the blade clattered to the floor. James swept the assassin's legs and put him face down on the marble with brutal efficiency. Guards, James said calmly. His breathing was steady. His water glass was still in his other hand, not a drop spilled. But that wasn't the end of it. 3 more attackers emerged from the crowd, moving toward the Emperor. James was there before the guards could react. He moved like water, like lightning, like something that shouldn't be possible. The first attacker went down with a broken arm. The second collapsed from a strike to the solar plexus. The third tried to flee and was unconscious before he took 2 steps. 10 seconds. 4 attackers neutralized. No weapons drawn. No visible effort. The hall erupted into chaos. Guards surrounded the royal family. Nobles shouted and screamed. But James stood calm in the center of it, meeting Arya's eyes across the distance. She stared at him, her heart hammering. The blade had been inches from her throat. She'd been seconds from death. And he'd stopped it like it was nothing. Who was this man? That night, she found him in the archive library, reading tactical histories by holographic light. She stood in the doorway, watching him for a long moment. He looked up slowly, as if he'd known she was there all along. Who are you? She asked quietly. I'm your husband. No. She stepped into the room. I mean, who are you really? I've trained with the finest warriors in the Dominion. None of them move like you move tonight. None of them have your speed, your precision. That wasn't normal combat training. That was something else. James closed his book. He was quiet for a long time, studying her face. Finally, he seemed to come to a decision. What do you want to know? Everything. He gestured to the chair across from him. Arya sat, her heart still racing from the adrenaline of the attack. I served in the United Earth Void Guard for 12 years, James said. It's a unit that doesn't officially exist. We handle threats to human space that require discretion. Boarding actions against pirate stations, hostage rescue behind enemy lines, assassination of high-value targets. We operated in places where failure meant more than death. It meant losing entire colonies. Arya felt cold.
But they all share one
You're a
characteristic.
covert operative.
They exploit vulnerabilities
I was.
that shouldn't be predictable.
Now I'm something else.
You're saying the humans have
He
inside
leaned forward.
information about our operations.
Earth didn't send you a diplomat,
More than
princess.
that, warlord.
They sent you
I'm
a
saying
weapon.
they have people inside
Because
our
there's
operations.
something coming, and your
Our
dominion isn't
security
ready for it.
checkpoints, our supply chains,
He activated
our
a holographic
communication
projector.
networks.
An
The
image
humans we've
appeared
recruited
between
as
them, a
collaborators
star
and
chart
civilian
showing a vast,
administrators.
dark
We've
mass
screened them
moving
all
through
according
space
to
like a
standard
cancer.
protocols, but somehow
The Void
resistance is
Reavers,
getting
James
detailed
said.
intelligence about our
An
movements.
AI swarm that's destroyed
Fresh felt his
17
unease
civilizations in the
crystallize
last
into
60
genuine
years.
Show
They
me
don't
the attack
negotiate.
patterns.
They don't
A
retreat.
holographic map of Earth
They
appeared,
consume every
scattered with
resource
red
they
markers
encounter and
indicating
move on to the
sabotage
next target.
incidents.
6
At
months
first
ago,
glance,
they
they
changed
seemed random.
course.
But
They're
as
heading
Kresh
directly
studied
for
the display,
Celestian space.
He began to see the underlying
Arya
structure.
stood abruptly.
The attacks
That's
weren't random
impossible.
at all. They were coordinated.
Our sensor
part of a
networks would have
larger
detected
strategy
them.
designed to disrupt
Your
specific
networks are
aspects of
designed
the
to detect
occupation.
conventional threats.
Resource extraction
The Reapers know
facilities
how
have
to
been hit
hide.
first, slowing the
Earth's
Dominion's
deep space
ability to
arrays have
harvest
been
Earth's
tracking them
minerals
for
and
months.
biological resources.
That's why I'm here.
Then communication
Your father
relays,
was told,
forcing
but
the
I don't think he
occupation forces
understood the
to rely
severity.
on less secure channels.
Or he didn't want to believe
Then
it.
supply routes,
How long?
stretching logistics thin.
Arya's voice was barely
Each
a
wave of
whisper.
attacks built on the previous
At their
one,
current speed,
creating cascading failures
4 months.
across the occupation infrastructure.
Maybe less if they accelerate.
This is military planning,
She felt dizzy.
Kresh said slowly.
The man she dismissed,
Professional
mocked,
military planning.
ignored. He'd known this
But their
all along.
military was destroyed.
He'd been preparing while
We
she
watched
treated
it
him like
happen.
dirt.
Yes.
Why didn't you tell me
warlord.
sooner?
We
Would you
destroyed
have
their
listened?
ships and their stations.
James asked simply.
But we didn't destroy their
You
soldiers.
made your position
We just
clear on
made
our
them
wedding
invisible.
night. I
The
was to know my
realization
place
hit
and
Kresh
stay
like a
invisible.
physical blow.
I did
The
exactly
Cascade
that.
Protocol.
Anger
The
flashed
scattered
through
fighters.
her. So
The
you
pilots
decided to
who had
keep
vanished
vital
into
military
civilian
intelligence to
populations.
yourself.
They didn't
I've been
abandon
sharing
their
everything with
posts,
your
he
military
said,
council
his
through
voice rough
proper
with dawning
channels.
understanding.
They've been
They
ignoring it.
infiltrated their own
He
civilization.
stood. Tonight,
Those pilots,
you saw what I
those
am.
soldiers, they're still
For the
fighting.
first time, you're actually
They just
looking at me
removed their
instead of through
uniforms
me.
first.
So now
Vex
I'm telling
nodded
you
grimly.
directly, something terrible
We've
is
been
coming,
analyzing
and your
human
people aren't
communication
ready.
intercepts with this
And you
hypothesis
are.
in mind.
I'm ready to do
93
whatever is
days ago,
necessary to
we heard
protect this
panicked
dominion.
civilian chatter,
That's
emergency
why Earth
services,
sent me.
normal people being
He walked
normal.
to the window, looking
Now
out
we're
at the
hearing
triple
same
moons
thing,
rising over
but
the
our
training
linguistic
grounds.
analysis suggests subtle
I know you
differences
didn't
in
want
speech
this marriage,
patterns,
princess.
stress responses, and
I know you
information
see
distribution.
humans as primitive, as
we
lesser.
believe a significant percentage
Maybe
of
we
the
are.
civilians we've been
But we've
interacting
learned
with
to
are
survive
actually
in a
trained
hostile
military
galaxy by
personnel.
being very, very good
How
at
many?
war.
Unknown,
When the Reapers come,
warlord.
you're going to need that.
But consider, the
Arya
humans
stood
had
in the
approximately
silent library,
50,000
her mind
personnel in their
racing.
space forces.
Everything she'd
When
believed
we
about this
defeated their
man,
fleet,
about this
maybe
marriage,
10,000
was wrong.
survived.
She'd been
Those
so
10,000
focused on her
scattered
own wounded
across a
pride
planet
that
with
she'd
8
been
billion
blind to the truth
inhabitants.
standing right in front of her.
They could be anyone.
What do we do?
The
She
clerk
finally
processing
asked.
supply requisitions.
James turned to face
The
her.
construction worker building our
prepare.
garrison.
I need
The
access to
translator
your
helping us
military
communicate with
databases,
civilians.
your fleet deployment schedules,
Any of them
your
could be
weapon
a soldier waiting
specifications.
for orders.
I need to train
Kresh
your
studied the
commanders in
map again,
tactics they've
seeing
never
it
seen
with new
before.
eyes.
And I
The
need you to
humans hadn't
convince your
surrendered.
father to take this threat
They
seriously.
hadn't regrouped.
He won't
They've
listen
done
to me.
something far more dangerous.
He barely
They
listens to
become
his own
ghosts,
generals.
indistinguishable from their
Then
own
make him
population,
listen.
impossible to
James's
root out
eyes were
without
hard
alienating
now,
the entire
all
civilian
pretense of the
base.
quiet diplomat gone.
This is unprecedented.
Because in
he
4
said.
months, everything you know
I've
will
conquered
burn if we're
14
not ready.
worlds.
Arya
Not
met
one of
his
them
gaze
tried
and felt
anything
something
like this.
shift inside her.
The other species
This
valued
man had
honor,
lived in
warlord.
shadows for months, accepting
Formal military
humiliation and
traditions,
mockery,
clear
all
chains
while
of
carrying
command,
the weight of this
separation
terrible knowledge
between
alone.
military and civilian
He hadn't been
populations.
weak.
Humans
He'd been
appeared to
patient,
value survival over
waiting,
honor. They're willing
preparing.
to blur every line.
I'll speak
break
to
every
him, she
convention,
said.
if it means
But
continuing
the
to
military
fight.
council,
Then we
Duke
increase
Valen
security.
leads them.
Screen
He won't
every
accept
civilian,
human
Scan
tactics.
for military training.
I know.
Use truth detection
A
technology.
slight smile crossed James's
We've
face.
tried, warlord.
That's going to be a
The
problem.
humans have countermeasures.
They stood in the library as moonlight streamed through the windows, two people bound by duty, beginning to understand that their alliance might be the only thing standing between civilization and annihilation.
Even when we identify a
Outside, the stars gleamed peacefully, but in the dark spaces between them, something ancient and hungry was drawing closer with every passing moment. The storm was coming, and when it arrived, Princess Arya would learn exactly what kind of man she'd marry. The war room of the Celestian Dominion had never felt so small.
Garrison 7 is under
Emperor
attack,
Theron
a
stood before
technician
the
called.
massive holographic display,
Reports of
his face
coordinated
illuminated
assault
by
from
the red
multiple
warnings that
directions.
covered every screen.
They're using our own
Around
weapons,
him, his
stolen
military
from the
council
armory
argued
3
in
weeks
rising
ago.
voices, their carefully
Scramble
maintained
response
composure
forces.
cracking under the weight of what they were
Garrison
seeing.
3 is also under attack.
12,000 ships.
And 5.
The Void Reapers
And
had
12.
emerged from dark space 3 days ahead of
technician's voice
schedule,
rose with
their
panic.
fleet filling the void like a
Warlord,
swarm of
we're
mechanical
receiving distress
locusts.
calls from 17
Each vessel
garrisons
was identical,
simultaneously.
sleek, black,
All major
devoid of any
population
aesthetic
centers.
consideration.
The humans are
They
attacking
existed only to
everywhere at
kill.
once.
Arya
Crash
stood
stared at
beside
the
her
tactical
father,
display
her
as
hands
red
gripping
alerts
the edge of
multiplied
the
across
tactical
the planet's
table.
surface.
Her heart
This
hammered
wasn't
against
a
her
scattered
ribs.
resistance anymore.
For weeks, she
This was
tried
a
to convince the
full-scale
council
uprising,
that James's
coordinated
warnings were
across
real.
continents. Time to stretch
Most
his
had dismissed
forces to
her.
the breaking point.
Duke Valen had
How?
openly
He
mocked the
whispered.
suggestion that humans knew
How are
anything
they
about
coordinating
genuine
without
warfare.
communications we can intercept?
Now the truth hung before
They're
them in
not using
horrifying detail.
communications, Warlord.
Distance
Vex
to the
said
outer
quietly.
colonies?
They're using
Emperor
people.
Theron asked, his
The
voice
same
steady despite
invisible
the pale
soldiers
cast
who've
to
been
his
living among
face.
civilians for 3
8
months.
hours, Admiral
They
Kress
received their
replied.
orders face to face.
Maybe 6 if
Impossible
they
to
accelerate.
intercept.
The
And
colony
now
on
they're
Terex
executing a
Prime
plan
has
they've
3
been
million
preparing since
inhabitants.
the day they've retreated from
They're
space.
evacuating, but they won't
For
get
the first
everyone out
time
in
his
time.
military career,
Fleet
Warlord
status.
Kresh felt genuine fear.
We have 3,000
His
warships
forces were
mobilized.
powerful, technologically
Another
superior,
1,000 in reserve,
capable of
but they won't
destroying
reach
any
combat
human
readiness for
military formation.
days.
But how do you
3,000
fight an
against
enemy who looks
12,000.
exactly like everyone else?
Arya's throat tightened.
How do you occupy a
Those
planet
odds
when you
would
can't tell
normally be
soldier from
insurmountable,
civilian,
but the
when every
Celestian
handshake
Dominion
might
had
be
never lost a
reconnaissance,
major
when
engagement.
every smile might hide a knife.
Their ships were superior,
The
their
humans
crews
had turned
expertly
their greatest
trained,
weakness,
their tactics
their
refined over
technological
millennia.
inferiority, into a
But James's
strategic
words
advantage.
echoed in her mind.
They
Your
couldn't
people
win a
aren't ready.
conventional war, so they'd
Duke
simply
Valen
refuse to
slammed
fight
his
one.
fist on the table.
Instead,
Enough
they created
delay.
a nightmare scenario where
Every
the
moment we
Dominion's
waste
advanced
is a
weapons
moment
meant
closer
nothing
they get
because
to
there
our
were no
worlds.
targets to shoot.
I'll take the Vanguard
All
fleet
forces to
and meet them at
defensive
the Carrion
positions,
Nebula.
Kresh ordered.
We'll crush them
Recall
there
all
and push
patrols
forward to
fortify
destroy the rest.
garrisons.
Duke
And send a
Valen,
message to
perhaps we
Dominion
should
High
consider a
Command.
defensive
Earth is
posture,
not conquered.
Admiral Kress began.
Request immediate
Defensive.
reinforcements and authorization
Valen's
to
silver
implement
eyes
Scorched World
flashed.
protocols.
The Dominion does
Warlord,
not hide
Vex
behind
said
shields.
carefully, Scorched World
We are
protocols
conquerors,
mean eliminating
not
the
cowards.
civilian population.
We'll show these
That's
machines what
30
it means to
billion
face
potential work
Celestian
units.
steel.
The
Emperor
Dominion will
Theron
lose more
looked
in
uncertain.
resources than they gain from
The
conquest.
numbers.
I know.
Numbers mean nothing against
But what
superior
choice do we
tactics
have?
and warrior spirit.
We can't control a
Valen
population
straightened
that's
his
fighting
uniform.
us with every breath while
Give me
pretending to
command,
cooperate.
Your Majesty.
Either we break
I'll
their will
return
to
with
resist
victory or
completely,
die trying.
Or we abandon this world.
A voice spoke from the corner
Before
of the
Vex
room,
could respond,
quiet but
another
clear.
technician
You'll
called
die
out,
trying.
Warlord, we're
Every
receiving
head
a
turned.
broadcast on all frequencies.
James Reeves stood in the shadows near the
it's from
door,
the humans.
where he'd been standing unnoticed
Audio
throughout the
only.
meeting. He'd been invited at Arya's
The voice
insistence
that
but
filled
had
the
remained
command
silent
center was
until now.
female, calm, and
Valen's
utterly
face
confident.
flushed.
This is Commander
How
Sarah
dare
Chen
you
of Earth
speak in a
Defense
military
Forces.
council, human?
93 days ago,
I speak
you
because
destroyed our
lives are at
fleet and
stake.
thought you defeated us.
James stepped into the
You
light.
were wrong.
He wasn't
We
wearing
didn't
his
retreat.
diplomatic
We
uniform
advanced
today.
to our real battlefield.
Instead, he wore
For
a
3
simple black
months,
combat
we've lived
suit
among
with
our
no
people,
insignia.
learned your protocols,
You're about to
identified
order
your
3,000
weaknesses.
ships into a massacre,
We've waited
and I
and
can't
watched and
watch that
prepared.
happen without saying something.
And now, we're reminding
A
you of
massacre.
something important. You
Valen
can
laughed
conquer our
sharply.
sky, you can destroy
You
our
know
ships,
nothing of our
but you'll never
capabilities.
conquer humans.
I know you're thinking
Because
like
we don't just
conquerors
fight
when you
with
need to think
weapons.
like survivors.
We fight with patience, with
James approached the
adaptation,
tactical
with our
display.
absolute refusal to accept
The Reapers
defeat.
don't fight like living
You wanted
enemies.
Earth.
They have no
Welcome to the
fear,
longest,
no morale to break,
bloodiest
no
occupation of
command
your
structure
empire's
to
history.
disrupt.
We'll
They
make you
fight
pay
as a
for every
networked
kilometer
intelligence
you
with
hold,
perfect
every day
coordination.
you stay.
If you meet
And
them in
the
open
end,
battle,
you'll leave,
they'll
not
surround and
because you were
overwhelm you
defeated
through
in
sheer
battle,
numbers and
but because
flawless
the cost
tactical
of staying became
synchronization.
unbearable.
Then what do you
This is
suggest,
our planet.
human?
And we're just
Valen's
getting
voice
started.
dripped with contempt.
The transmission
That we
ended.
flee.
Silence filled the command center.
I suggest you fight smart instead of proud. James manipulated the holographic controls.
a planet
The
full
star
of
map
hidden
shifted,
soldiers, endless
highlighting 3
resistance,
specific
and a
points.
population that would never,
The
ever
Reapers are
stop
following
fighting.
a direct path to your
The
core
Dominion could
worlds.
blast the planet from
But their
orbit,
formation
that
is
would mean a
elongated,
defeat.
they're stretched across
They
several
could
light
increase
hours.
their garrison, but
If
every
you hit
soldier
them
sent
here,
would just
here,
become another
and here
target
with
for
coordinated
invisible
strike
enemies.
groups, you can break their cohesion.
Sub-Commander, Kresh said quietly,
Use hit-and-run
draft a
tactics.
message to High Command.
Destroy their scouts and
Inform
sensor
them that
nodes.
Earth may not be worth the
Force
cost
them
of
to slow
occupation.
down and consolidate.
Request permission to
Guerrilla
negotiate
warfare,
withdrawal.
Admiral Kress said thoughtfully.
Vex stared at him in shock.
It might work.
Warlord,
It's
the
cowards'
Dominion doesn't
tactics,
negotiate.
Valen spat.
We conquer or
Unworthy
we
of the
destroy.
Dominion.
Then perhaps
It's survivors'
time to learn a
tactics,
new option.
James corrected.
Because these humans
And it's
have
how
taught me
Earth has
something I
fought
never
enemies that
expected.
outnumber us for
Sometimes
centuries.
the weakest enemy is the most
Earth.
dangerous, not because of
Valen
what they
stepped
can do in
closer to
battle,
James,
but because
his
they
hand
refuse
resting
to
on his
accept that the
ceremonial
battle is
sword.
over.
Earth
On the
has
streets
fought
of
pirates
Berlin,
and raiders.
Sarah Chen removed her
We've
civilian
conquered
jacket and
empires.
pulled on her old flight suit.
Don't presume to lecture us on
Around her,
warfare,
hundreds
boy.
of other civilians
James
did the
met his
same,
eyes calmly.
revealing the soldiers they'd been
I
all
presume
along.
nothing.
They moved
I'm
with
offering
purpose
you
through
a
the
chance
city,
to win.
heading toward their targets
You can
with the
take it
confidence
or
of
ignore
people
it.
who'd spent 3 months
Either
learning
way,
every
in
detail
12
of the
hours,
enemy's
people will
operations.
start dying.
The aliens
The
had
room
made a
fell
mistake,
silent.
Sarah thought.
Emperor Theron
They'd
looked
assumed
between
that
his
defeating
decorated war
humanity's
hero and the
military
quiet
meant
human who
defeating
lived like a
humanity
ghost in
itself.
his palace.
They'd forgotten
The
that
weight
every
of millions
soldier
of
is
lives
also a
pressed
human
down
being,
on the decision.
capable of patience,
Finally,
deception,
Valen
and
spoke.
adaptation.
Your
They
Majesty,
treated Earth
if
as
you
just
give
another
command to this
conquest,
human over me,
never
I
realizing
will
that they
resign
were
my
facing a
commission.
species that had spent
The
its
choice
entire
is
history
yours,
learning to
your
survive
most
against
accomplished
impossible
commander,
odds.
or a primitive who thinks
The
he
battle
understands
for Earth
war.
wasn't over.
Arya felt
In
something
many
break
ways,
inside
it was
her.
just beginning.
She saw it in
But
her
now
father's
the humans
eyes.
had the
He was
advantage
going to
they'd been
choose
preparing
Valen.
for. The enemy
It
no
was the
longer
safe
knew who to
choice,
shoot.
the expected choice.
Sarah smiled grimly
James
as she
was
checked her
untested,
weapon.
unknown.
The aliens wanted
Father,
a war.
she said quietly.
Fine.
Listen to
They'd
him.
get one unlike anything
Arya,
their empire
I
had
appreciate
ever
your
seen.
faith in your
A war
husband,
without front
but Duke
lines,
Valen has
without
50 years
uniforms,
of.
without rules.
Duke Valen has 50
A war
years
where
of
every
fighting
human
enemies
was a
who fear
potential
death.
soldier, and every day
These
of
machines
occupation
don't
cost
fear
the
anything.
invaders more than they could afford
James
to
is
pay.
right.
The Cascade
fight
Protocol
smart or
had
we
worked
die
exactly
proud.
as intended.
Please.
Humanity hadn't
Emperor
surrendered when
Theron
its
looked at his
fighters fell.
daughter for a long moment.
It had simply changed
Then
the
at
battlefield.
James.